Hello, my name's Evan Koch, and I'm the designer of this board game. It's called Zurround. I'll just turn it up a little like this. It's like Surround, but with an S instead of a Z. I designed this game approximately 4 years before this video was formed, 4 years and a few months. And so far it's been mentioned in 2 different newspaper articles, the San Francisco Chronicle and the Santa Rosa Press Democrat. I'd like to thank my friend Chris Smith for writing the article in the Press Democrat, and I'd like to start this by thanking Kelly Rajala and Patrick Lochner for enabling this video. Okay, here's the board. This game is abstract strategy. That means there's no die rolling, no card drawing. Every move is based on skill and knowledge. There's no luck. Up to 4 can play, but that's just for fun. 3 and 4 can play, but it's the best game with 2 players. So for the purposes of time limits in this video, I'm going to show just the 2-player version. 1 player controls blue and green pieces. That's the cold player, because blue and green are cold colors, like water and grass. The other player is the red and yellow player. That's the hot player, fire. So 1 player is red and yellow, the other is blue and green. In most board games, each player just has 1 color, like chess, black versus white. So a good way to remember as you're playing is think of yourself as either the hot player or the cold player, depending on what set of 2 colors you have to work with. Now, the object of the game is to surround the hexagons on this board. There are 61 hexagons on this board. It's a base 5 hexagon grid. That means each side is 5 hexagons long. The middle hexagon is gray. That is just to orient your eye to show you that that's the middle of the board. There is no special quality to it. It's another hexagon like any other. These marbles are used to mark the spaces, or the hexagons that are surrounded by the pieces. I'll show you how those are used in a minute. For now, I'm going to show the pieces. All right, for each set of colored pieces, there's an equal distribution of each type of shape and size. This is a 3-segment C-shaped piece. I get in letters of the alphabet designation. I'll put it on the board now. This is a Y-shaped piece. It's also 3 segments. Here is a Z-shaped piece. That's 3 segments as well. There's 9 large pieces, 3 C's, 3 Y's, and 3 Z's. This is a 2-segment V-shaped piece. There's 9 of these for each color, and a 1-segment single. There's 9 of these for each color as well. Now, your goal is to obviously score as many points as you can. The winner is whoever has the highest score at the end of the game. And the way scoring works is achieving ownership of the hexagons is how you score, and the scores are represented by these marbles. At the end of the game, when you add the marbles up, each marble is worth 1 point. Now I'm going to show you how surrounding for ownership works. The goal is to have a majority of your color covering each hex. Here's an example. 3 blue, 2 yellow, and 1 green. This hex would be owned by blue because blue covers more segments of the hexagon than any other color, 3, 2, 1. Another example of ownership is 1 color covering 4 sides of a hexagon and another color covering 2. In fact, you don't even need to have another piece there. Once 4 sides are covered by the same color, that piece, that's what's called guaranteed ownership. It's impossible not to achieve ownership, so you're allowed to mark it. Note that on this one, the hex is completely surrounded, but if there was an uncovered segment, for example, if the V was rotated this way, blue would still have ownership. If 1 color covers 3 sides of a hex and 2 different other colors cover what remains, the color who covers 3 sides has guaranteed ownership. There is a special bonus for completely surrounding a hex with the same color. It's called grand ownership. On this hex here, blue has completely surrounded the hex and scores twice as much, and you denote that by putting 2 marbles down. There is also a phenomenon called a dud. A dud occurs when no color can achieve ownership of a hex. For example, in this scenario, 3 sides of a hex are covered by blue, and 3 sides are covered by yellow. They've tied. And so a black stone called a dud is placed in the middle of the hex to show that no color has achieved ownership. Now, you notice I didn't say no player, I said no color. That's because technically the ownership of any given hex is based on the color of the piece. That means that it's possible for the same player to end up inadvertently attacking himself. In this scenario, it would seem like the cold blue-green player would own this hex, but it's still technically 3 blue facing 3 green, and so it would still be a dud. So you don't want, in most circumstances, to combine your two colors. You want to keep them apart because they can hinder each other. All right. Now I'm going to show what happens if you can't play all your pieces. At the end of the game, I'm jumping the gun a bit, but at the end of the game, there's a penalty for unplayed pieces. You actually lose points for not playing all your pieces. And how it works is there's a formula, n-1, the number of segments minus 1 is the penalty for not playing a piece. At the end of the game, if I couldn't play the C-shaped piece, 3 minus 1 is 2, I would lose 2 points. If I couldn't play this V-shaped piece, 2 minus 1 is 1 because it's a 2-segment piece, I would lose 1 point. And if I couldn't play a single, 1 minus 1 is 0, I would lose no points. It would be free. So if all that's left are singles, and the game is otherwise resolved, you don't even bother playing them. You just end the game early. Now I'm going to show you how pieces can be placed. They're placed on the grid. They can be placed against the edge, but they may not stick off the edge. Pieces may connect to corners. For example, the green and the blue can connect here, but they may not overlap like this. They cannot literally go over each other. There's almost no rules for piece placement. Each turn you can pick any piece you want and place it wherever you want. There's one exception. The very first round of gameplay, player 2, the player who doesn't go first, cannot play the same shape piece that player 1 started the game with. For example, if player 1 puts the green C here at the start, player 2 may not play a C-shaped piece. The reason is because a clever player could try and mirror their opponent to make a tie. For example, putting the yellow C here and then mirroring every move. So on the first round of gameplay, player 2 could not play the same piece. He could play a different shape piece, for example. And then after that, people could just play whatever they want. All right. I'm going to now tell you some rudimentary strategies. I've pretty much explained all the rules to the game. It's good to keep your two colors away from each other because, as I said, they usually interfere in bad ways. The blue and green player, for example, is going to want to make one territory with blue and one with green, and the red and yellow players want to make one territory with yellow and one territory with red. Now, it's also bad to place pieces in the middle early. You kind of want to put pieces near the edge. That way, your two colors can be far apart from each other. This is an example of a pretty good move for green for starting the game. It's important not to put pieces actually against the edge early in the game. For example, this green Z-shaped piece, one of the segments is against the edge of the board. That is bad because you want to maximize the value of every piece. Every time you place a piece, it's having multiple effect on multiple hexes. For example, here it's getting two sides of this, one side of this, two sides of this. But if you put a piece against the edge, there is no hex here for the piece to affect, so it's like turning your heater on and opening the window. Late in the game, the edge is kind of all that's left, then you do it. But putting a piece near the edge is very good early in the game. In fact, that's what you're supposed to do, because that way you maximize the value of the piece and you enable yourself to have it as far away from your other color as possible. For example, I might work on putting blue ones on the opposite edge, and it's harder for your opponent to attack because if your opponent tries to attack it from the back, they're doing what I said earlier you must not do. It's also important strategically to play the larger pieces first. It does not mean that you're going to play all your larges and all your mediums and all your smalls. Sometimes you have to mix up a little. Sometimes a smaller one will fit where a larger one won't. But in general, you want to play your larger ones first because late in the game, if you play all your small ones first, your singles or your twos, you might end up with larger pieces that won't fit, and not only do you lose points for not playing them, but on top of that, you didn't get to play them, so it's kind of like a double punishment. It could have scored for you, and on top of that, you lose points. It's like getting stuck with your cue in Scrabble. It's also good to mix it up. This is a game of resource management. Unlike the original game of Go, you do not have as many pieces as you need to fill the board necessarily. You have a certain amount of each type of piece. For example, the cold player would only have 3 green Zs. So, for example, if your first 3 moves were green Zs, let's say, well, later in the game, if you wanted one, you wouldn't have it. So it's good to kind of mix it up a little. You know, maybe play a Z and a C, and that way you don't have, you know, late in the game you'll still have a good variety of pieces to pick from. It's also important to mix up your colors. When I say mix up, I don't mean combine them geometrically on the board, but to not play several moves in a row with one color. For example, your first move might be a green, and your second move might be a blue, you know. But if you made like 10 moves in a row with green, your green will score really well, but at the end of the game, your 2 colors, in this case blue and green, and in the other case red and yellow, are added together. So if you focus too much on one color, the other color would do so horribly that they won't add together well, and your opponent can just kind of do average with each of his and beat you. It's important not to focus too much on achieving guaranteed ownerships early in the game. For example, I could start the game, lump a bunch of pieces together like this, and get all excited because I'm getting guaranteed ownerships. And that looks really good, but this is a game of territorial control. So if the other player, for example, is spreading pieces out and controlling large sections of the board, in the long run, they may end up winning because they controlled more territory. So you don't want to be too greedy too soon. All right, I think I've explained enough rudimentary strategy. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to play a sample game. I don't really have time to play a whole game, not that you'd probably want to see it anyways, but by playing at least several moves, you can get an idea of how the game progresses. This game definitely has a beginning, a middle, and an end. Unlike Monopoly, it can't drag on forever because every move puts a piece on the board. So it kind of, you know, plays itself out. So I'm going to play both sides. I'm going to split my brain. I'm going to be the red and yellow player and the blue and green player. Blue and green is going to go first. There's no rule about what color goes first, but in this scenario, he will. I'm going to put the green C here. I like this one. I call it the girdle, putting the green C near the edge. Now the red and yellow player, the hot player, is going to respond to that by putting a yellow Z here. Now, player 1 is going to put a blue C on the other side. And yellow and red is going to put, a red C here. You'll notice that already the two players have made opposite sides of the board beginnings to their respective color territories. Okay, now green is going to attack red a little by doing this. And the other player might respond, I don't know, by maybe doing a Z here. So you see they're working on their territories. And now blue might do this. Yellow might stick his Y-shaped piece in here. Now you'll notice you have like red and green fighting on one side of the board and yellow and blue fighting on the other. All right, now green is going to put a Y-shaped piece here. And red is going to put a Y-shape here. So you see now that each player is securing territory along the edges of the board. That's how you start a game. You secure territory along the edges, and then the game kind of works in towards the middle. All right then. Blue is going to take his C-shaped piece and attack red on this side. Red's getting pinched between blue and green. So red's going to respond by putting a Z-shaped piece here. Now you notice we're several moves into the game and neither color has achieved a guaranteed ownership. There's no marbles on the board yet. That's important. You don't want to lump your pieces together. You want to spread them out. If you surround an area and get a bunch of guaranteed points early, you will not secure enough territory. Okay. Now blue is going to put a Y-shaped piece here. And yellow is going to put a C-shaped piece here. Okay, the edges are pretty much mostly established. So the players are going to start attacking each other internally. I think the green Z will go here and make a dud against red. And red might respond by going here to fight off green.